Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, the level of the art tour that I attended for the kids actually is very similar to how I conduct university classes. I mean, the two things I would say are very important that is not happening at education level at primary or below, or secondary, sorry, is number one, we give voice to the kids to tell us what they think. We don't tell them this art means this symbol means this, that color means that. That their views matter, they have a subjective experience that is valued equally. There's no hierarchy of who knows what, telling them what is right or wrong. I think this is a fundamental mindset change, which is why introducing art education in schools is highly controversial, because nobody wants to know that the teacher is not going to, at the end of the day, tell the child, well, that perspective is not quite right. We're not there yet. I don't think as a society we still want our teachers to tell the kids that's the right way, that's the wrong way. So for me, it's the subjectivity of the child that is valued. It's the fact the child has a perspective that is not our own, that is something that is okay. And sometimes I saw some of the children, they said some really crazy things. And I can totally imagine that in a school setting where the teachers will be absolutely saying, well, nobody thinks like that, or society won't accept that, and things like that. So there is an openness, a lack of moral, moral ideological preaching. You don't have that when you look at art. Actually, you're allowed to express how they feel, what they think. And I think that's the beauty and also the danger of art, why people are scared of art. Because art is not about telling people what is right. Art is about telling people what you feel. It's about the purest, to me, expression of humanity. And if you don't like it, too bad. That's what artists are. They're human, and they're not going to do things that you want them to do. Thanks.
And I think it's also about, at the end of the day, if you want to change, we're always talking about how we don't have a gallery-going culture. People rather go to shopping malls than go to a gallery or museum. And I think if you want to change that, you have to start when they're young. It's got to be part of your culture, that you go to the gallery with your parents. And part of the reason also why we started it was that we insist that the parents have to come. You don't just send your kids with your maid or you just send them on their own. You come. Because a lot of times parents, they don't understand it themselves. They sometimes don't want to bring their kids in. And a lot of the parents actually say, oh, we actually learned quite a lot at the end of the tour. They enjoy it as well. So I think that's, it's all very long-term. It's not very sexy. But I think we have to make these kind of changes if, we want something to happen.
Okay, thank you very much to Rakan and Carmen, because I think it's very fundamental, no matter what kind of platform, where transparency, accountability, essentially it boils down to art education and education of society in different aspects and things like that. And that says a lot in some of the fundamental things that we all realize and we all agree, I think, is that we need to deal with. Especially, I think I appreciate that when Carmen and Rahel talks about the innovative way of bringing both artwork and history or cultural discussion into one. I think that's some of the possibilities that Ada might want to look into. Ilham might want to produce a book for working with Carmen, for example, just an example, just throwing out ideas, all right? But essentially, I think education is very important, I suppose. But could I invite other type of possibly either ideas of a platform that you think is addressing, because the idea of the art education essentially this Carmen's comment at the end talking about subjectivity is addressing, I think, question number 5. All right, discussion and critique essentially is about are we acknowledging and respecting differences of opinion and ideas in terms of interpretation of artwork, your values, your political views and ideology, okay, with or without art. Yes, Sylvia, yes.
I had my second solo in the National Art Gallery in 2015, and first 2 weeks I missed it out. For the next weeks, which amounted to about 3 months to 4 months, I did take the audience around each painting, explaining it to that art history, culture, emotions, and all the things. But I did open the floor to my audience to ask them how they interpreted this particular painting. And of course, they were very hesitant, but they came out with their different views. And I told them, it is okay, you are right. Then I gave them my take, and they appreciated it. And they felt it. The eyes opened. Some of them, they shed tears, others laughed. So don't you think this is art appreciation and art education?
Yes.
1.5 hours.
Yes, you are becoming the platform to transmit your own artwork. And if I may, I think Sharon Chin, in one of her discussion maybe 2-3 years ago, she was talking about the differences between writing in the sense when artists write for themselves or about each other's work. So in the sense that artists, I think, and that was actually raised in this morning's session, which is that artists taking an active role to write and to comment, because that is very important. And I think that also echoes a lot of ideas that we've been talking about here, is that the capability and the willingness to articulate, all right, about your work, about your art, or about your views about art and culture. And then I think those should build into the way we think about platform, all right? Or platform here are not just about spaces, but different ways of projecting artistic practice and artistic discourse. Yes. Isa.
I just want to, I guess, share with everybody about the discussion on arts education. I don't know whether Janet's still here. She's left. So she sits on a committee, I believe, with MOE that is looking into reviewing some of the curriculum, and this includes arts. But on CENDANA's side, we recently met 2 donors. So we've been having micro meetings with some donors, and the recent meeting was with two foundations that are active in funding the arts. And in our understanding of trying to deconstruct ecosystem, siapa buat apa, matric buat apa semua ni, these two donors are active in supporting arts excursions to galleries, to museum, to shows. So their advice to CENDANA is, mungkin CENDANA tak perlu tengok dalam this sort of subsidy. So hence next year we are going to focus more on the artists in school programs. And that, if all goes well, is to get schools to choose. It's an informal education, I think, approach, where schools can choose daripada segi visual artist ataupun seni persembahan ataupun muzik, di mana artis tersebut boleh pergi ke sekolah untuk mengajar. So dia mengajar dapat grant daripada kita, tapi students juga dapat exposure for the arts. Keduanya, the Arts in the City program, daripada segi, I think what I was mentioning about experimentation and all that, the Art in the City program, the next program, we are hoping to hand it over to the arts community to design and do what they feel is bersesuaian. It doesn't have to be commercial, it can be experimental. We want to take the risk, we want to do it with the community bersama-sama dengan sokongan CENDANA dengan hopefully the other ministries. You know, I just want to also select our current thinking process is after 1 year in operations. Of course, our focus, it has always been in KL. Tetapi the ministry is open and ready for us to look at beyond KL juga, di mana kita boleh membuat lebih kerja dengan Borneo ke, dengan utara ke, selatan. Kemudiannya, but we have this dilemma whether we either expand location or we expand subsector. Because CENDANA only focuses on 3 subsector now. Tetapi what if CENDANA looks into crafts juga, into literature? So how can we merangkumi semua sektor yang lain juga dengan dana yang terhad ataupun resources yang kita yang ada tersedia terhad? Tetapi sebagai kesimpulan, I think I want to say is that we don't know everybody. We don't have all the knowledge that we need or the expertise. So like what we do now with Rogue Art or our art projects or Pusaka and all that, we work with our different partners to implement certain things. So kalau ada idea yang benar, yang boleh bermanfaat kepada the wider sector, please reach out to us, because we believe in collaboration and partnerships together. Okay?
Okay, Amin.
Hai, saya Amir dari Art Movement. So, saya nak berkongsi sedikit tentang soalan nombor 5 tentang where can we find spaces and method of discourse, sharing, knowledge and criticism. So, I nak share about a platform. It's on Twitter. It's Tweet Seni. I've been running the Twitter account for 4 years now. Okay, so I believe that Twitter ataupun ini ada social media boleh digunakan sebagai satu platform untuk satu sesi discussion yang menarik. Cara kita di tweet sini adalah kita akan memilih seorang curator that will curate the account for 1 week, and then diorang akan share about whatsoever yang diorang akan share, and then the followers will interact with that. So saya rasa yang macam maybe we need to start, ataupun mungkin kita dah start untuk melihat virtual spaces sebagai salah satu daripada platform ataupun spaces untuk kita mempamerkan ataupun menjadikan satu discourse center. Yeah. Thank you.
Okey, terima kasih Amir ataupun Tok Kura. Ya, kita harus memaksimalkan penggunaan virtual spaces. Kalau dulu kita rasanya di FT semua sudah bermula, forum-forum yang sebelumnya. Malangnya saya tak ada Twitter account lah. Selain daripada itu, juga mungkin kita boleh imbas kembali tahun 70-an ya. Begitu gairah sekali diskurs atau wacana yang berlaku di dalam majalah-majalah seperti Dewan Sastra, Dewan Budaya dan sebagainya. Dan itu adalah satu lagi hal yang I think kita boleh try and revive balik lah, bersama dengan mungkin pihak Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka ataupun mana-mana lagi agensi penerbitan ya, kerana dan of course juga dengan mainstream newspapers yang mana dulu kita boleh tengok ada macam-macam kolom seni ya, Biar Asal, Dr. Zakaria Ali dengan J. Anunya. Tapi sekarang saya tak pasti ada lagi atau tidak, ataupun dah diminishkan dia punya existence ya. Itu salah satu lah. Kalau anda semua ada proposal ataupun ada cadangan untuk kita engage balik dengan orang-orang ataupun penerbit-penerbit ini, mungkin itu salah satu lagi space yang kita perlu terokai lah untuk mengenengahkan perihal seni kita.
Okay, as a researcher, so I think with the current technology, but things are ephemeral today. I mean, as much as like Facebook, Twitter and things like that, right? Nanti hari ni ada, nak esok you punya puan nak scroll, nak cari, nak remember the hashtags and stuff like that. Okay. And there's a certain limitation on how much that you can say on these virtual platforms. Because I remember when I was doing my research, like the mid 2000, there's the older kaki seni punya ni, in which there's a lot of content on art reviews and stuff like that, right? After the kaki seni dah tak ada dah, then all those so-called archives material tu dah tak ada. Okay, so that's the thing when you have when you don't have the physicality of things. Okay, jadi for me, my problem as a current researcher sekarang ni, then where are the materials of the 2000s? We are not 2015, 2014, kalau macam tidak ada properly published. Okay, so then we used to have sentak, but then sentak pun susah nak sustain and all that lah. So whether we like it or not, these are the kind of documentation. If you want to sort of like transfer knowledge and things like that, it's they're essential as this. The publication that is run by us, or is special to the arts. It doesn't have to be. People don't read journal articles. Okay, I wrote like 8,000, 12,000 words punya journal articles. People don't read that. Okay, only the academicians read those stuff, and nobody cites me anyway. Okay. But you know, people read the 1,000 words, 1,500 words, some reviews and things like that. So those materials are very precious to me because it captures the current shows at that time. Once you dah tak ada the physicality of the magazines and things like that, macam mana lah nak cari? Search pun tak jumpa dah, because it's ephemeral, then the sites went down and stuff like that. So dah hilang lah bahan-bahan tu. Macam how am I supposed to write about the last 10 years? Okay, so whether you like it or not, maybe there's a persistence of having or revive, menghidupkan semula sentak ke, CENDANA dedication,
Yeah, I think what Serena is talking about basically is still the diverse form of writings about the arts, whether from the scholarly, academic to art writing, which should be doing the role of engaging the public, which is the art writer or a form of public intellect, right? Which is maybe missing or kind of bridging. Again, is the certain kind of platform that how can that be sustained or encouraged or incubate, right? We are dealing with a lot of levels of issues and problems that we want to work with, and we think is important, from education to writing and things like that. Which I think we have a lot of things to say. But before I get to Bingley, maybe just because Zihao this morning talked about supporting project that is based on process and research. Maybe I would like to invite Zihao and also some of the artists who are here to think about what do you think are the impossible residency project and things like that can be done, should be done, that you can show up that hopefully 5 years, 10 years later, well maybe very soon, that you can see things, artists doing residency in museum with a bank and things like that. Just give us some ideas in the sense of how to go about what are the possibilities, okay? Not just a normal residency that you can do it in a studio and make an art project, but what other form of residency? I would like to have that kind of things being addressed. But before we get to that, Bingley, would you like to speak? Yeah, sure, go ahead. So that then after Bingley speak, we will get the artists, because I would like to hear the artists' voices here.
Yeah, because you spoke about the platform, and I just want to just let the floor know that from the collectors, right from a collector's point of view and what the things we do, over the last 6 or 8 years, a group of collectors, we call ourselves the Art Friends, and basically we have already published 2 books. Basically, a group of our collectors just chose 3 artworks which we like, and we actually write about the artworks ourselves. So in many ways, just like the children trying to interpret the artworks, the collectors actually write what they think or how they end up buying those artworks. So these are one of the platforms which I think, if we do keep it up, it doesn't have to be the Art Friends group. It could be a lot more collectors who can actually put things together in the book, because the books which we have, it's still available, and in many years to come, 5 years, 10 years, the books will always be on the shelves.
Collectors asserting their subjectivities in many ways, more ways than none. But Zihao and the artists that were here.
Hi Zihao. I think one of the examples that I can think of is National Museum of Ethnology in Leiden, where they invite not only researchers or postdoc, but also people who do image studies, artists who work or experiment with visuals. They even have textile designers to examine their collection, right, and to do research about this collection. And they always have this open call for submission for proposals. I think museums in Singapore as well, Asian Civilization Museum, they have open call for researchers, postdocs as well. I think, and of course the obvious example is NTU CCA. I think museums in Malaysia can do the same thing. Inviting artists to look into their collections. It doesn't have to be National Museum, it can be museums that is based in a particular state, to look into particular collections and to draw from their references that is relevant to that particular locality. And about cross-disciplinary approaches, I think it has to be initiated by institutions, because artists might not be able by themselves to convince non-arts discipline, I feel. So in most cases, these transdisciplinary approaches, they are always institutionally initiated. And just now, Bulat mentioned about his tweet. I also want to mention about his zine. He has this zine called Arto, part of the Arto movement, right? And also Budin published zines. I think these are also platforms for cross-disciplinary approach, where the artists can actually publish their thoughts, statements, inviting writers and art critics and art historians to write and publish, and to kind of sell this merchandise at zine festivals and make more connections.
Again from Melaka. Just to share my experience living in Australia, I guess we also need somebody to represent artist community with a certain council, state council, city council, where they are the one who plan for any festival, any urban planning, to engage with the community and to play their role as the council of a certain area. So in Australia, a lot of festivals been held with the sponsors or funded by council. But for example, in Melaka, we have more than 20 council setiap daerah. Yeah? But when come to art project, they tend to go straight away to the contractor rather than artist. Jadi dekat situ, we as artist rasa macam bagaimana nak masuk untuk menjadi speaker atau memberi rangsangan idea tentang what can we plan with the urban punya engagement with the community and all that. They've been actively producing calendar of event every year because they are city council yang dapat duit daripada the state government or daripada federal, kan? Tapi kalau tak ada artis di situ, jadi rujukan mereka pergi kepada kontraktor yang nak buat replika, yang nak buat other business yang tidak rasa ada kepentingan untuk menaikkan art pada sesuatu daerah tertentu lah. Saya rasa Australia punya experience tu memberi saya a lot of pelajaran mengenai macam mana engagement council dengan artis and art institution is very close intact. Ya, itu daripada saya. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a good example, as in like the conversation, the dialogue between the artistic communities, not only with the federal level, in this sense that we're always thinking about how to deal with the federal and the central policy, but also with your local council, whether it's the state, the city, or to the kampong. Yeah. And in one way, I think Pangrok Sulap embody that kind of practices that you deal with the kampong, each community and things like that. If you can see that kind of space and how this sphere of spaces operate, I think this is quite interesting in a sense. Yeah.
Saya berminat nak tanya Cik Paiman dengan projek Lumut ya. Macam mana you all deal dengan, because they have activated a new cool space in Lumut
Okey, sebenarnya ni komiti baru ya, yang mana secara tiba-tiba kami dijemput sebab kami ada mini gallery caricature dekat Lumut. So anyway ni daripada satu tempat mana premis tu dah kena tutup dah 3 tahun. Sebab tu mula-mula dipanggil sebagai Lumut Bistro. Okay. So tempat tu dia ada stage satu, dan bistro tu dia ada 4 building, di mana 4 building tu ke arah dekat stage tu. Jadinya dia mula dengan premis yang kosong yang dipropose oleh, kita gunakan sahabat alam kuasa. Sahabat Adam ni dia buat proposal untuk membuat konsep baru untuk space tu yang dipanggil laman karya seni. Jadi LAKA kita panggil Jadi dekat situ kita buat cross discipline, yang mana kami selat-selat buat komiti untuk aktiviti, art activity, yang mana children craft whatever. Satu lagi dia ada negara kota. Negara kota ni dia experimental music, and then juga dia ada banyak organized gig. Lepas tu dia ada gerik kognitif, yang mana dia ada aktiviti berbasikal, dan di atas ni dia ada toko buku Hamzah, yang mana buku-buku yang daripada pelbagai disiplin ada dekat situ, yang boleh dibeli dan boleh dipinjam dan boleh dibaca di sana. Dan ada backpackers, yang mana lelaki 6 katil dan perempuan pun ada 6 katil, di mana bukan buat perniagaan, cuba nak sustain tempat tu. Jadi satu kepala RM17 dia buat masa satu malam.
Promosi pula.
Ini dia konsep yang kita suka.
Sebab saya berminat dengan cross disiplin, di mana bagus budak-budak environmental tu, kuasa tu memanggil seorang artis untuk masuk kan.
Jadi benda ni barulah kita, tapi dah ada dekat selat-selat tu dah buat 3 projek, yang mana projek pertama dia pada Pesta Tanglong hari tu. Jadi kita buat workshop macam mana buat tanglong. Sebab problem dia dekat Malaysia ni, yang selepas ni kita tengok dasar kebangsaan, kebanyakan paksi dia kepada budaya Melayu saja. Kan? Tapi dekat situ kita nampak bagaimana kita nak menyantuni budaya lain, yang mana tanglong kita buat sama-sama. Malam tu kita sama-sama barak dengan tanglong yang ada kita buat sendiri. Kan? Kemudian dia ada pula hari tu Abror ada buat filem, tunjuk dia punya filem, so dia ada discussion kat situ. Buat masa ni je lah, sebab benda tu baru sebulan sebenarnya. Tapi yang paling bagus, yang mungkin kita boleh cadang, banyak space-space kerajaan yang tak dipakai, yang boleh dibuat benda baru.
Itu sebenarnya artis kena pergi cari, minta lah, jangan dia akan bereput macam tu.
Dia minta, dan lagi satu kita kena ada input dan output. Macam mana kita kena buat simulation. Jadi dia nampak, diorang ni tak nampak visual, tapi kita kena buat. And then sekarang ni dia ada orang pandai Photoshop, apa whatever, cuba tunjukkan benda tu macam mana akan jadi.
Kita have a scenario.
Ya.
Kita ada permintaan khas untuk Cik Budin bercakap sikit. Sebab dia banyak dulu bermula dengan kolektif kan. You have your sebiji padi, apa lagi, studio tikusnya, and now cetak 12 the printmakers punya kolektif. Maybe you can talk about that as well.
Untuk saya Budin, seniman. Kalau nak cerita pasal kita punya kolektif, memang ada kita start dengan kolektif lah. Sebiji padi hilang, mati, and then sekarang studio tikus ada lagi, kita buat projek-projek independen lah. Sekarang kalau kata hubungan kita dengan ada badan-badan yang ni, tak ada lah. CENDANA wujud pun kita seram juga, tak tahu dia punya struktur macam mana kan. Dan kalau kita bekerja sebenarnya sangat independen. Dan baru-baru ni kita buat cetak 12 independen juga untuk printmaking. Kita nak buat sesuatu yang fokus dekat printmaking, tapi tradisional. Itu antara projek-projek saya lah. Dan yang ada juga kita buat sebelum tikus, buat zine, independent zine. Itu antara kita nak cross juga boundaries tu. Macam mana zine yang kita buat, zine pun bukan macam zine biasa, kita ada teks, visual. Macam mana kita nak merayakan visual, nak menguji kuasa visual terhadap orang-orang biasa lah. Sebab kadang-kadang teks pun, banyak teks pun seram juga kan? So kita nak, mungkin kemahiran kita visual dan kita gunakan visual. Terima kasih.
Adalah nak tanya pandangan kan seorang seniman. Penting tak maknanya you all berhubungan dengan ekosistem yang ada sekarang ni, ataupun boleh bergerak secara sendiri? What I mean by ecosystem is mungkin galleries, agents, and then media, kan? Tutorial, curators.
Kita benda tu kita percaya lah. Memang ada ekosistem, dan benda pergerakan seniman-seniman seangkatan saya pun bergerak sebab ada ekosistem ni. Dan ada institusi, ada galeri, seperti kita ada pameran. Kalau tidak, memang perlu ekosistem ni. Sebab tu kita terus berkarya. Kalau tidak, cacat je satu badan. Let's say tak ada galeri, tak ada audience, tak ada apa tu, ekosistem tu cacat. So memang kita bekerja dalam ekosistem. Mungkin saya ada idea juga ni pasal apa, possibilities pasal residency apa semua tu kan. Okay, kalau kita kata kita nak residency kat New York, sometimes Samsudin Wahab di New York, kadang-kadang apa yang kita dapat tu, kita nak cari apa kadang-kadang. Saya fikir, kenapa tak kita residency balik ke kampung, ataupun kita residency kat satu tempat pembuatan bahan-bahan tradisi di pusuk-pusuk negeri yang kita tak explore lagi. Benda tu yang kita nak ni, pembuatan kuih yang lebih dekat dengan kita. Kadang-kadang kita pergi New York pun tak tahu apa, makan angin.
I think just to reverse that, very often we think about why we don't get to be invited by the curators or the researcher, or we don't get to be invited to go to a Biennale, to the museum abroad. I think going back to the idea I threw out in the previous session is that why can't 10 artists, each of you fork up 500 ringgit and invite a curator to come to see your work, for example. So be more imaginative and playful with the resource that you can have to change the game. Okay, instead of you having the dialogue being attracted to the institution or the player or the agency, is that possible for you to change that from your side, of course, right? The systemic issue that we deal, issue of transparency, accountability is still need to be addressed. But I think artistic forces and the creativity can be used to play in a different way, because or else that your creativity is just being subsumed into a neoliberal system way of doing things, because now you're just asking what does a center want, what does a center do, right? How do you play around with that center? I think Budin in his career and with his associate and friends have been playing around with that aspect in many ways. Okay, lastly, before we wrap up, because we still have about 10 minutes, I just want to read out some questions that's posted on Facebook, one by Mr. Go Yu Ping. Basically, it was a question in terms of institution. It asked, how many government agencies or jabatan are there which take care of visual arts? Any answer? I think there's under Jabatan under the Balai Seni Negara, which is under another agency, but I do not have that answer. What is their KPI? I suppose if I can't answer and no one can answer that, at least we should be aware, alright, there's their ways of thinking about that. Are they doing a good job? I don't know. What is there to improve? I think it needs a different workshop. No, I think they're good. Some of them are doing a good job, some of them. Okay, Malaysia is a multicultural country, is stating obvious from the past. What activities in visual arts that involve interaction among multiracial artists? I think Paiman, in a way, talking about his Lumut project, or working with the Lumut project, is pointing out some possibilities, crossing that boundary, crossing the cultural, ethno-cultural stereotype that some communities been holding. In future, what's the support plan, harapan, to build a good environment for the visual arts? Again, these are some of the questions being shown out in the Facebook. A second one from a similar Mr. Daniel Chong, addressing the second session. If Balai or a gallery makes a profile page for our artists, that page can be a primary source for a Wikipedia article. The wiki page can be more efficient in global search results. Might be interesting too to have some initiatives or events that are digital first initiative, whereby there's no art to go to, let the beauty or message flow out from the screen to wherever that is the center that you occupy. So Daniel is basically proposing a different type of platform in the sense, but which is actually virtual. The space that you need is screen in order to access those information. But essentially, I think Daniel makes this comment because he is actually actively involved in the Malaysian chapter of Wikipedia contributors, and so he has some insight into how to do this and how to get involved in creating this kind of database with Wikipedia. And he shared lastly one Wikipedia page is meta.m.wikimedia.org/wiki/glam, GLAM. So these are just some of the information. You might be able to see it in the MEJABULAT Facebook page. Any more comments? Just ideas?
We have time.
We still have time. Could maybe yes. Yeah. So maybe we can go back to some of the questions that need to be addressed. The Arts Council, the Arts Union, as a kind of platform, a platform that has it exist before. Maybe some people have the answer. They were Art Council. There isn't, is or not, might be. So maybe could I have Simon, if you want to address this, or could I just get?
We're going to talk in the next session.
So we're going to talk about that in the next session, in the final wrap session. The round up.
Can I just ask, I mean, just now, did you mention about 20%, 10% back to the artist from sales?
Yeah,
What is it? What's it about?
The royalty. Whenever an artwork is being sold again to the auction houses.
They have been reaping a lot.
Oh my God.
I just suggest we take
This question has come up already a couple of years ago. I heard it. Bingley should be able to do something about it. It's always an art auction.
Okay, I'm afraid. I think probably.
Yeah. So just to wrap up, because I think platform is all talking about possibilities, the things that we can see coming in mid-term, but also I like to talk about long-term and vision. But before that, before wrapping up, maybe I would just want to shift it in a different way. And can I just invite Sunita to just briefly say what are you planning in terms of this conference or symposium you're talking about, in a way for us to see what is needed to be addressed in a systemic way. Thank you.
Fingers crossed this is going to happen because we are just confirmed to work with to host it in January, the second weekend of January, 12/13. The objective is that, I don't know if many of you are aware that this coming March 2019, the International Federation of Arts Councils, IFACA, it's an international body, is holding their World Summit. They do this every year, they're holding it in KL. And when I first heard about this, I think a couple of years ago, I thought it was ironic that IFACA is being hosted by our government here in KL, when most of us don't even know what an arts council does. So, and then Malaysia Baru happened. So that kind of stimulated the need to really try and organize a forum where, because everywhere after the elections, there was a lot of interest in people talking to the government, but what became apparent is a lot of people don't know how to talk to government. We don't know how to be active as a civil society, not just as artists. So the objective of the forum, because I am now in academia and arts management, prior to that I was a practitioner, but now I have certain resources at my disposal, including a regional network. So the plan was to just talk about what is our history of cultural policy in Malaysia, so that everybody is on the same page. The fact is there was an arts council set up at different points in our history, but we don't even know what they did, what happened to them, how it happened. So to make that clearer and document it, because that's really important, we were talking about that just now. And then also bring in a few examples from the region about how they engage with their government so that they can advocate or push for rights or be involved also in policy making, so that it's not just top down.
So this would be open, or we don't have details yet?
Open. I mean, the idea is anyone can come.
Yeah, I think because this is very important, not just for the institution practitioner, but also for the artist association from different states. So we understand that what is the role of the Arts Council, why is it necessary, or how it has performed in different part of culture and society.
And it's talking about culture on a very broad level, so it's not just visual arts, it's all art forms, but also we have to engage with ideas of creative industries, and legal matters and public policy. So hopefully, because it's going to be we will also be able to invite educators from non-arts fields to be part of the conversation, because it's very important.
So just to wrap up this session, thank you very much. I think what we were trying to think is that to gather all the different energy here to be able to, and ideas to push forward, to create a kind of roadmap. So maybe you are getting different ideas in the discipline, in the cultural, transdiscipline, working with the system and to know how, knowing who. And for me, I advocate the idea of what other possibilities can be mobilized or call out in order to sustain our artistic and creative practice. So the tangible and the imaginative and speculative is what we hope that everyone could bring forth from this session, and also drawing the threads from the last two sessions. So this is not the final session yet. We will have another
Very
short one just later after that. So thank you very much.
I think everyone's energy is flagging. I can feel it in the room. Should we take a short break and come back? Or would you just like to finish now? Oh, let's finish now. Okay. Can I then invite maybe Simon and Nadira if they want to add anything? Simon would like a bathroom break. Yeah. Okay, in that case, actually, I would like to say something as one of the co-organizers. I think it's been really a very long day. Thank you for staying and participating. And I think that one of the things I'd like to think about in this at the end is do we want to do this again? And if we want to do this again, how should it be done again? Everyone has a feedback form, so please contribute there and let us know your ideas of how this went, what other things can be covered, and who should initiate it. This was obviously an initiative of CENDANA, and we've come in to just help. But I think we've been talking about arts councils, we've been talking about artists unions, artists associations, and perhaps there's some physical, sort of tangible way that this kind of forum can help towards that. Even by, for example, is it okay if we share all your emails in one group? Is everyone okay with that? Yes. So that everyone is connected, things like that.
Yeah, because there's a Personal Data Protection Act, we need to make sure everyone's agreeable to share.
Okay, so we'll follow that.
Although there's a Data Protection Act, and if you feel that you need to say something anonymously, you may write it in the paper, I've been told, and submit it to us so that we can bring out those questions. Right? For example, if your question has to do with something you think is more sensitive because of different value and ideological system or whatever, please bring forth to us and write to us and anonymously, so that we can at least bring up to the rest. If it's not being addressed, at least that is made aware that there is such issues.
Beverly, do you want the government agencies to step up so you guys can handle it more?
I think that's the issue. I think actually the other thing I was going to say is that online, we've had a couple of participants online, but we've sort of offered a kind of post, people have thoughts after this forum that, we thought about this, there's something else we want to say. I'd like to invite sort of post feedback, but we have to have cut-off time. So I think I've said something like it's a Monday evening. If you can get back to us this weekend, just write to MEJABULAT email, or you can post on Facebook. And we'll consider it as some sort of feedback notes for the report, so people can share that, just to continue. And so perhaps your anonymous comments could also be handed in to us before you leave, and we can include that.
People are asking what's going to happen next once the report is.
Would you like to answer that? Well, Simon's back, so perhaps it's...
So do you want us to step out now? I can have a cigarette. So you guys are comfortable talking about sensitive things?
Are there any issues that you feel that you want to speak due to censorship, due to whatever, and you feel you are not comfortable to address because there's a perceived government agency here? I think they are more mature than you think they are, but if you think that you no, yes, not when you're around.
You can't ask that question on camera now.
Yeah. If not, then we just move on to the wrap up. In that sense, could I invite?
So kita akan respon pada session 1, what do artists want, apa yang artis mahu tadi. So antara poin-poin penting yang telah saya catatkan ialah tentang saluran ataupun cara ya untuk memberi atau mengetengahkan lagi karya-karya artis to make the artist presence more felt. Kemudian kita kena adakan cuba break the generational gap tadi. So I hope today's session telah sedikit sebanyak introduce us to each other, and hopefully after this conversation kita boleh berpanjangan ya. So just communicate with each other, keep in touch. Mungkin ada benda-benda yang akan spark selepas ini. Thank you wakil-wakil daripada persatuan ya, CAPS. Kemudian kita ada lagi satu tadi. Fuad Osman juga ada emphasizekan tentang kepentingan meletakkan orang-orang yang tepat di tempatnya ya. So itu lagi satu benda yang kita harus sentiasa pushkan lah, dan mungkin kena bagi awareness tentang itu. And also we talked about a little bit of with the need to have legal assistance for artists. So that will come back to session 3 just now, dengan kita punya isu tentang perlunya ada semacam induk atau society yang focuses on artis punya issues. Wah, dah marah ni. Tan Si Hao juga menyebutkan tentang public audience and also rapport dengan curators, or rather artists dengan public audience. Correct me if I'm wrong. Kepentingan curators, art writers dalam membinakan kewujudan ataupun penerimaan publik terhadap artis itu sendiri. I guess terlalu banyak tadi sebenarnya in session 1. Okay, another pertinent point that I would like to highlight is by Puan Wairah tentang to have a bigger audience, we need to have a platform dengan media, but then again the media is not well translated sometimes. I think you mentioned that, and kita kena fokuskan juga itu, kerana apa yang dilaporkan kadang-kadang tidak semestinya mewakili sebenar. So artis pun kena memain peranan untuk mengabsahkan lagi dia punya konten tentang karya dan kekaryaan mereka. Rahel Joseph also mentioned about the need for more curators and writers, and okay, yang lain pun sama juga lebih kurang, and Citu juga emphasize about the ecosystem yang not centered, does not center
Doesn't center in economy and tourism.
Doesn't center?
Between tourism and economy.
Oh ya. Okay, itu satu. Okay, Jai kata artists just make art. And another good point is by Haryani, yang dikatakan not all artists is multitasker, which is true. And in that sense, I feel that artis sebenarnya perlulah ada good rapport tadi yang saya sebutkan. Tak boleh bekerja dalam kelompok sendiri secara individual.
tak boleh menjadi incestuous, that's the term we have been using before this. Jangan jadi sumbang mahram gitu kan, duduk sama-sama sendiri, yang lama nanti yang keluar pun apa kan. So you have to open up a little bit and work. Yang kita mention tadi, cross-disiplin, multi-disiplin, supaya lebih banyak exchange of ideas, lebih banyaklah orang yang macam-macam bidang dan professionalism boleh contribute dia punya sumbangan. Dia bahagian dia lah yang dia boleh buat. Kalau artis ni, mungkin kita bercakap pasal art kan, pasal menghasilkan karya. Tapi bila you merentasi disiplin, lebih banyak benda-benda yang menarik akan timbul. Okay? Saya harap saya betul lah apa yang saya rumuskan ini. Jadi apa yang terlalu banyak tadi yang disebutkan, I cannot mention everything. So I hope that kalau ada apa-apa lagi yang mungkin tak terkeluar, yang tak sempat disebut just now, just list down and probably write to the Facebook. What's the Facebook page? Just Sidang Suara MEJABULAT Sidang Suara Seni. Ada satu page khas untuk today's session. You can add more of your inputs over there. So I think I should finish off with just thank you to everyone. Terima kasih banyak-banyak yang datang dari jauh semua kerana sudi bersama dengan program ini. Terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I'm still trying to figure out how to play this space as a filmmaker. Like, artist juga lah. It's moving visual arts. Okay. So what we gathered, at least like from our discussion, because actually, believe it or not, the topic was not suggested by me. It was actually suggested by Simon in terms of just talking about how to, I guess, how to sort of decentralize Malaysian arts, but also to diversify the Malaysian visual arts identity. And I think the latter is more interesting to me, especially speaking as an exploration. So in terms of speaking about creative support, speaking about support systems, we're also realizing that creativity shouldn't just be restricted to the process of the art making itself, but also creativity in terms of just how do you actually fund your artwork. If say the institutions are not providing the sort of support or the kind of creative freedom that is necessary. And so another thing that was also brought up was that mentorship seems to work better coming from successful practitioners. If it is that academics or curators are wondering how it is that they can expand their network to the outside, then perhaps there is something that is missing there, a gap that needs to sort of be filled. Jennifer Lingi from Sabah Art Gallery stressed the need for perhaps having a platform for networking and expanding networks, which I think can be addressed in a symposium. So perhaps gatherings like this could be more helpful towards artists across the country. We also stress on just the need for young curators and art writers. How do we make art discussion accessible to the next generation apart from festivals? How to utilize social. We didn't go into it as much as we potentially could have, but how to use technology and social media to bridge those divides, whether they're generational or they are logistical. So the thing is, in terms of talking about the art scene outside of KL, I was actually pretty happily surprised today by the turnout, by the reception, but also that you see Sabah and Sarawak as well as Penang are doing really well. So maybe it's not so much of a matter of also just diversifying the visual arts identity, but maybe because KL does represent Malaysia as a capital city by default, then maybe it is that the discussions need to be had with KL on how to talk about Malaysian art in a way that is more inclusive. And then also bridging, between urban and rural communications artists so that there can be an ecosystem where we are also sustaining cultural heritage, also helping to encourage contemporary cultural heritage artists.
bit of a reflection. I think sort of like loading down while Salvin and Hakim and all of you were speaking. So I like to sort of like maybe start by, okay, I'm gonna hold this closer to my mouth. Okay. I like to start off by sort of like going back to some of the things that were sort of like raised, right? The desire for either setting up a kind of like body to facilitate sort of like knowledge exchange, or to create a professional sort of like association in order for advocacy work to sort of like have some kind of like impact, or to unionize, basically to sort of like recognize that the work that each and every one of us do as cultural workers or artists are essentially it's labor, right? So it has value to it on some level. But what I like about how all these sort of like attempts to sort of like come together outside of sort of like state initiative is sort of like really what it underlines is that the principles of collaboration is recognized as central to how we might grow our art scene in the future, right? Sorry, what? So I wonder, but actually what Salvin raised just now, and sorry, what was sort of like discussed in the sort of last session, is that I wonder when cross-disciplinary sort of like practice rolls off so easily off our tongues these days, resulting in some of the most ludicrous and formulaic kinds of like, new media engagement or whatever you want to call it, it might be time for us to reassess the value of discipline, a commitment to a kind of rigor and a kind of like persistence, right? I know it is time to reassess this when the university dean starts throwing the word cross-disciplinary research around for KPI purposes. A lot of cross-disciplinary projects are premised on how it can be instrumentalized towards a value output that is ultimately less speculative than monetary or commercially quantifiable. There is a difference between pure science and STEM. Take note of that. Take note that pure sciences are just as much in a position of irrelevance in the eyes of our sort of like current need to sort of like commercialize every kinds of research output that we do at the university level as the arts and the humanities. But this reassessment is not to be, but in trying to reassess the situation, I'm not trying to become a disciplinary sort of like purist, but I want to sort of really recognize that each discipline is in and of itself already cross-disciplinary. But if you ask half of our lecturers, the intellectual history of the discipline that they teach in, they would be hard-pressed to give you a meaningful sort of like account of it, unfortunately. We do not have a culture that values institutional memory or community memory. Most of our experiences and encounters are subjected solely by sensations of the new. I agree with Carmen, we don't voice our thoughts enough today. But unlike Carmen, I disagree that we have not reached that state. As a historian, I want to suggest that this was not so in the past. High school souvenir magazines, Chinese literature, Chinese language periodicals, look at all the Jawi periodicals, you see a whole different kind of like opinionated universe out there with real sort of like intellectual sophistication in how they argue out their ideas. And you can really tell by someone's writing or ability to voice his or her thoughts, and it shows how the person is able to sort of like sustain the complex argument on so many sort of like levels, right? So, what I want to sort of like suggest is that what we're sort of like trying to sort of like maybe focus on here is two things. We can sort of like maybe think of two things, two areas that we can sort of like that's worth sort of like paying close attention to. One is like writing, to sort of like really sort of like promote writing on all sort of like platforms as ways as a medium to sort of like encourage the voicing of sort of like one's sort of like opinions and sharing of sort of like one's ideas. Because when you share an idea, you do not just sort of like share it in the present day. You do not just address a contemporary sort of like audience, and it's not just all about urgencies. It's also about addressing a future sort of like audience. You're writing to someone in the future that you might not know. Right? So I think it's a nice way to sort of like think that what we do today, it's also contributing to what's happening perhaps in the future.
It's not fair, they have a lot of time to write their rebuttal. Yeah. But I think, I can just to wrap up some of the key points from the third session, I think I can only have keywords here. Process, knowledge production, and some of the issues, the challenges, especially for those scholars or researchers in academia, and how that actually reflect the macro view, it's how society actually understand or perceive towards the arts and the cultural world. But yeah, as much as we are talking about the phenomenon of this cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary, my own view, position is actually a pendulum swing. Okay, how artistic work has been informed by discussion in psychology, philosophy, religion in the past, and then of course it swings to modern art practice, looking at formalist issue discussion, and then cultural theory, philosophy, and things like that. And so artistic practice is also being pushed to engage different type of humanistic activities in order to address both global and local tendencies. So the needs of the localized knowledge, the needs of the local issues, to address that using artistic manner. But we can also flip that question and ask that, does addressing those issues expand the artistic practice and the language within the artwork? So those are the questions that maybe, for example, Pangrok have to answer later on. Is that, okay, by engaging the community, working with the community and the kampong folks, all right, we transmit a certain way of visual language to them, but does it change our visual language as well? So those are the questions that I think then can be feedback into the scholarly research and the knowledge production. Is that what does the artist learn from the community? What does the artist learn from the neighborhoods and from the their audience that they work with, their collaborators? Then I think that transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary becomes meaningful. So if we could change that as well, and when art engages sciences and with engineers, with STEM, or with other form of with bankers or lawyers and things like that, you might not change law, you might not change engineering, but it might change the artistic thinking. And actually, I took this idea from Boris Groys because he was talking about the cross-pollination of arts and other form of knowledge. When art and politics come together, it doesn't change politics, but it can change artistic practice and our understanding of art. I think it's just one way of looking at this pendulum swing between the purity, the absolute idea of art, and art as something which is malleable, that always able to, not necessarily always able, but to absorb different form of knowledge and trying to reclaim it as part of artistic work. In this way, I think this is how I take up the idea of platform. It's not necessarily a space in a sense, not only a physical space, but it can be a platform that comes in the form of time, project, a platform that comes in the form of idea and vision. Okay, and how do we viral that? How do we push that to others to see things? So I'm not reading from my notes, I'm just making things up. And that transdisciplinary, for me, is a kind of a collaborating of different ideas within your mind, with different group of people. And a lot of keywords that I wanted to use has been stolen by my three previous peers here: collaboration, transdisciplinary, and advocacy. So I'm just regurgitating so that I can finish my wrap-up session. Thank you very much.
I think we say we're all exhausted. So I think the dead. Sorry. Oh, okay, I'm passing it back to Nadira for a minute. Sorry, thank you Beverly for entertaining me. Yeah, so I just wanted to go over one more thing because it wasn't just about support systems, we were talking about why art needs to travel beyond Kuala Lumpur. So one example that I want to bring up, one case study is at based on censorship, is that when Fang Rok Sulap's artwork, Sabang Tanah Airku came to Kuala Lumpur, I was quite disappointed because the thing is just like people didn't understand the work. When the work was actually censored and taken down, artists in KL or curators in KL took the opportunity to talk about censorship instead without fully understanding the artwork or the meaning behind it, without us understanding the history or the indigenous, significance of, Bangsa rejecting the Keninga Old Stone. And so why this is important for art to travel around the country is also that different parts of the country can provide different interpretations of the work, and those different interpretations need to exist for us to gather a better understanding of the Malaysian visual arts identity.
Yeah.
Alright, so I just want to say thank you very much to our moderators today. They worked really hard. Can we have a round of applause for the moderators? And I think for all of yourselves, please have a round of applause for all the participants today. And thank you very much to CENDANA for supporting this roundtable. And would you any closing remarks, Izan?
They were asked, could they just close it, but some of them were asking what will happen next.
Perhaps I'd like to answer that. Got me!
Okay, sorry. I'll do it very quickly. What will happen is that Rogue Art will transcribe this and translate it into a report format so that it's available for everybody online on cendana.com.my. But when is that up there?
First quarter of next year.
Okay, first quarter of next year. So after the Christmas and New Year's. And then you may have a chance to access it and use it for anything that you require. Tapi on CENDANA's side, we're intending to speak to KP Balai, and inshallah from there also bring it up to Minister Muhammadin Kitapi on some of the issues or areas of concern by the visual artists. I hope that we can also continue the conversation if the artists want next time. Kak Hanim also reminded me to also share that CENDANA last week had signed the MOU with ICRAF. ICRAF is Indonesia's Creative Economy Agency. They are under Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And part of this MOU includes a partnership with them on the Jakarta Arts Biennale, an opportunity for our administrator or researcher to be with them, but also to have Malaysian artists be presented at the Jakarta Arts Biennale itself. Yeah, but we're still in discussion, so we'll update soon, inshallah. Thank you everybody very much.
As mentioned, if you have some further thoughts, either if you've written them down, please pass them to us with your feedback forms before you leave, or if you want to email us or post on Facebook before midnight on Monday, we can consider them for the report and for the transcript. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.